There's no power greater than X, or so the legend goes. Today, I want to talk about one of my all-time favorite consoles, the original Xbox. And what Xbox games am I actually playing in 2024? Yes, 2024? Well, I think this is the perfect way to show everyone just what I've been up to lately. Make no mistake, there's some absolute bangers on this list, but you won't find the typical Halo game on here. Reason being is that if I want to play Halo 1 or 2, I play the Master Chief Collection, and I feel like that's probably the best way to play since you can still play online on those games. The original Xbox had so many awesome games to play. It's always a blast to go back and just enjoy playing a lot of these games all over again. Sometimes it's the first time I've played them in years, maybe a decade or longer. It certainly takes me back to a much different and simpler time, I can tell you that much. I absolutely love video games, but it seems like lately, with all the newer stuff, the fun gets lost up in the mix. Back in the day, games were fun and you knew they were fun, and you knew they were going to be fun. So why don't we get started on this awesome list of games, and if you have any that I left out or that you enjoy to play, please let me know down below in the comments because I respond to everybody and I love hearing all the great game suggestions. First up, Jet Set Radio Future. This game is fantastic, and it really holds up well even by today's standards. I know Sega is making a new one currently, but going back to play this Xbox exclusive is still a blast. You go around grinding rails and tagging things with graffiti. The basic premise of the entire game is to tag over the other gang's graffiti with your own, so it kind of makes sense, and you need to collect paint cans along the way. There's a ton of funky music throughout the game as well. The cool thing about this version of the game is that there's no time limit like the Dreamcast game. I don't know about you guys, but I really hate time limits in games. It really is stressful and takes away some of the fun, so I'm glad that this game took away the time limits. And because of the art style, it still holds up graphically today. I think cel-shaded games works in a big way here. Even in 2024, like I said, looks fantastic. There's a lot of things to unlock in the game, including new graffiti signs along the way. This is one of the best original Xbox games that you can find, and I highly recommend it. Go ahead and give it a try if you can find it. It can be rare sometimes. Next up is a pretty cool game that I'd heard of previously but didn't really play until more recently, and that's Dead to Rights. This game is using like bullet times, sort of in the way that Max Payne was doing it, and I also think it's one of the best aspects of this game is the fact that you have this really cool dog companion that you can control and use as needed. It really adds some flavor to the mix because, hey, let's just be real, dogs are awesome, and getting to play as a dog in a game is more awesome. In Dead to Rights, you're a cop out on patrol, and, seriously, it seems like everyone has a problem with you and wants you dead for no reason. You literally start up the game and people are trying to bust a cap in you. It's crazy. Your dog's name, however, is Shadow, and you go out on patrol to a construction site randomly, and your father has been killed. So obviously, you're going to want to go out and get some revenge. Nothing quite like a good old-fashioned revenge story on the Xbox, and this is one that I highly recommend. It's really cool to see, and it handles pretty well as well. It took me a little while to get some of the controls down, as you can see, but I haven't played this game very much before, so it was kind of fresh to me. On to the next game, and I've been playing a lot of lately, and that's Fable: The Lost Chapters. Now, while you can play Fable Remake on Xbox 360 and even the Xbox Series X, The Lost Chapters is cool as well because it has some of the cut content, and it looks pretty fantastic even in this day and age. The Lost Chapters brings in new monsters, new spells, new armors, buildings, and even brand new towns. So it's well worth playing through the game if you want to complete this version of Fable. The Lost Chapter is a significant upgrade to the original game, and if you're an RPG fan, this is one of the best that you can play. Certainly one of the top 4 of the best RPGs on all of Xbox. The story is basically like this. You find out that Jack of Blades has destroyed your hometown when you were younger. He's the one that's responsible. So now you've gone off to join the Heroes Guild to become a bona fide hero. But the cool thing is that you can make choices that are good or bad, and there's multiple different endings, so your choices will matter. And it gives you incentive to play through the game more than once. I've played through this game multiple times because of that. It always gives you a little sort of added incentive, which I think is pretty cool. Now, I'm known for being a Simpsons fanatic and a huge Star Wars fan, so you knew Star Wars Obi Wan was going to be on my list. Now, keep in mind, this isn't a remarkable title by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a fun romp if you're looking for a game that shows kind of the events before Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. You, of course, play as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the interesting part of the game is that you control your lightsaber with the analog stick, which takes a little getting used to. There's also a variety of different force powers in the game, so you'll be able to have fun going through them and learning them as well. I think graphically it's definitely on the weaker side of things for an Xbox game, even though it's in fact, an exclusive at that, and the story goes that George Lucas himself made the call for this game to only come to Xbox. But apparently it sold so poorly, we weren't going to get a sequel or anything like that. There's a Jedi Arena mode as well, where you can play against friends, sort of like Jedi Arena did things on those games. Overall, the game is probably more for people that love Star Wars, and in particular love the prequels, but I always like to come back to this game from time to time and play for a little while, because, it is fun, and it is nostalgic for me personally. Now, next up, I wanted to talk about a game that I've sunk countless hours into, and that's Shenmue II. Believe it or not, this was an Xbox exclusive at the time. The Dreamcast version never released in the US because the Dreamcast unfortunately and very sadly died out and Sega left the console market. But Shenmue II was and is still pretty awesome. You could make the argument that the Shenmue games revolutionized the open-world single-player game that we know and love today. Yes, the tank controls can be a little bit cumbersome for sure, but overall the game is intriguing and has a fantastic story. You play as Ryo, and you're looking for clues, as well as talking to people and trying to get information on what happened to your father, and where to find Lan Di, who is actually responsible for your father's death. Spoiler alert! Anyway, one of the coolest aspects of this game is that you can go anywhere and interact with almost anything. Play a ton of minigames, you can collect cool toys out of vending machines. It really has a really awesome kind of 3D fighting system that they've implemented in this as well, but it also utilizes QuickTime events, but those are fairly easy to get down, and even if you fail, you'll just get the same ones again because it doesn't change or anything, so it's easy to kind of memorize. This is one of the best games of the era, and I highly recommend it to anybody with an Xbox. Also, if you're worried about not knowing what happened in the first game, then, there's a movie that comes with this game that helps you catch up on the story so far. It's very helpful, but just really cool to see nonetheless. Next up is my personal favorite sports game of all time, ESPN NFL 2K5. Now, when this game came out, I was in football heaven. It was the most realistic and easy to play sim football game that I've ever played. This game came out before things like achievements or trophies, but it rewarded you with the crib, which is basically your house, and you earn various trophies and things for your house by completing certain tasks. This game was one that I sunk hundreds of hours into online as well. I was a top 10 ranked player on Xbox and even on PlayStation 2. The great thing about 2K sports games at the time was that they were only $20, which is more than fair for sports games considering they're mostly just updated rosters. Now, EA of course bought the NFL license after this game was released because it forced them to lower Madden to $29.99 that year, and we've had no competition since that time. NFL 2K5 lets you download the VIP profile of anyone online as well, so you could practice against them, learn all their tendencies and playstyles. This was awesome and something that I'm not even sure that we see in today's football games. So basically, somebody that was higher ranked on the leaderboards, you could download their profile and practice against that profile, learn their tendencies, and then challenge them to a game, play them, and you would know their tendencies, and it's really helped out along the way. The game holds up incredibly well, and I highly recommend it to any NFL fans. I just wish I could get a current roster with it because I'd much rather play this game than Madden. Next up is an all-time classic, and that's Ninja Gaiden, right? Ninja Gaiden. I think most people know this game extremely well, but it was a showpiece on the original Xbox due to the sheer power advantage that it had over the GameCube and the PlayStation 2. If you're unfamiliar with Ninja Gaiden, it's actually a pretty awesome third-person action hack-and-slash game. It's one of the hardest games on the Xbox, however. It's definitely not a game for people looking for a casual stroll on a Sunday afternoon. Now, you'll be able to upgrade your abilities and weapons as you go through the game, and there is a bit of a learning curve to be found here, but honestly, I think it's not nearly as hard as I remembered. And some of that could have to do with the fact that it's older hardware, and there's not as many enemies on the screen, as well as the more advanced AI that we get nowadays. Don't get me wrong, it's still a challenge, but with games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, I think it's nowhere near those levels of difficulties. But it's still a fun playthrough, a still challenging game, and still a pretty good looking game if you're into these types of games, and so I highly recommend it. Next up is a rarer game that is Otagi, Myth of Demons, from the developers From Software. Obviously, these guys are super well known these days for the Souls games as well as Elden Ring. But back in the day, they made Otogi 1 and 2 exclusively for the Xbox. And this game can be difficult, but once again, I don't think it's overly hard compared to the newer games of today. Otagi is a single-player action-adventure game, very much in the hack-and-slash genre, in my opinion. And you can get health upgrades, casting spells, using heavy as well as light attacks is crucial to surviving this game because it's definitely a game with a steeper learning curve as well. Also, I have to point out that this game and the sequel are some of the more costly Xbox games to buy right now. Although it's a solid time to collect original Xbox games, some are starting to creep up in value and price, like the two Otogi games. They will probably be a little bit more costly to pick up, sometimes being $30 to $60 in that range. But I think well worth it because these are some of From Software's best bangers of the time and really kind of helped us get to where we're at now with their games. Next up, we have Quantum Redshift, and this game probably reminds you of the Wipeout series of games, and with very good reason. It's made by people who worked on those games. They actually left that studio and started their own studio, and boom, we have Quantum Redshift. This is sort of a spiritual successor to Wipeout, mind you. The game apparently is quite rare on Xbox because it didn't sell very well, and Microsoft actually canceled the planned sequel. Quantum Redshift is a racing game, sort of in the vein of a Wipeout, where high-speed races are held on hovercraft known as Sparks. There are up to 16 selectable characters, and there are at least 8 or 9 stages that I saw, with each stage featuring 2 alternate routes. Now, players have offensive weapons, sort of like like a Mario Kart or even a Wipeout, including a homing and non-homing beacon weapon. You have overshields as well as combat competitors during races. Races also features power-ups on the track that can charge weapons and shields. Believe it or not, this game was made on a shoestring budget of about $1 million, and it still managed to fail, although it has gone on to be a bit of a cult classic, and people sort of like this game and think it's like, kind of the next thing next to Wipeout. I enjoy the game, and I think it's cool, but it is one of those games that is also sort of creeping up in rarity and cost as well. So last but certainly not least, The Simpsons Road Rage. Does this game really need any introduction? The main form of gameplay of Road Rage is sort of an arcade crazy taxi style game where the player chooses characters from The Simpsons, obviously. You earn money by picking up the passengers, taking them to wherever they have to go within the shortest possible time. The faster that you're able to get your passengers where they got to go, they're rewarded with higher ratings and even more time. Regardless of how you perform, though, ratings deteriorate and time will eventually run out, ending your session. After each playthrough, if the player meets a certain threshold of earnings, they can choose to purchase 1 out of 16 of the Simpsons character drivers accompanied with their own vehicle, or 1 out of the 5 new starting locations. So there's different starting locations that you can pick, different characters, different vehicles, things like that. Now, people have been asking for a remake of this game for a very long time, and I'd absolutely love to see it, or a sequel straight up. This game is absolutely hilarious with all the voice cast and the writers from The Simpsons. They're always quirking, saying something funny, or making a joke. So yeah, I think that this is pretty awesome to see. And, again, I always like to point out, of some of the games that I like to play. These were 10 that I was playing recently, and I just have such a really good time with it. If you have any ideas for future videos, however, drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed my video today, please consider subscribing and liking the video, as it helps me out a ton. I love doing these videos. I am overwhelmed that I am close to 2,000 subscribers, and the videos have been doing extremely well. It's completely surprised me out of left field. I'm glad that so many people just enjoy gaming for the fun that it is. Thank you for taking some of your time out to spend with me today. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Please, please enjoy gaming for what it is. It's supposed to be fun. Game on, my friends. Game on.